This is the Almost Timely newsletter for the week of August 28th, 2022. What's on my mind this week? Flywheels. Let's have ourselves a super nerdy moment and talk about flywheels because I have some issues with them. Not the physical devices, but the marketing use of them. You've doubtlessly heard the term flywheel or seen mention of the concept as it relates to marketing. A whole bunch of companies have integrated and incorporated the marketing flywheel as part of their overall strategy. Here's the catch. Most of the companies who are doing this, most of the people who are writing about this and stuff, they're conceptually just wrong. Why? Because they're misunderstanding what a flywheel actually is. A flywheel is an energy storage device, right? It's usually something like really big, really heavy on an axle, like a big chunk of stone or iron or something like that. And the way it works is that it's got an engine on top, which is magnetic, and it's got some magnetic generation coils on the bottom, and this big chunk of heavy stuff in the middle. And it's on some sort of low friction rotational mechanism, usually ball bearings. And the way it works is that energy from other sources goes into the system and the wheel starts to turn, right? That motor at the top starts to turn this really heavy wheel, slowly at first and faster as you add more and more energy to it. It's a mechanical battery is really what it really is. And then after this wheel is turning and spinning, right, the magnets on the bottom are generating energy that then goes out to like power lines. So it's essentially taking some form of energy, turning into mechanical energy, and then turning that mechanical energy back into electrical energy. When you need power later, that flywheel stored energy turns those magnets and produces electricity, right? So these flywheels, have a ton of real-world applications. You see them most with unstable power sources, for example, like wind and solar, because what flywheels do best, what they're really good at, is smoothing out irregularities. For example, suppose you've got a windmill, right? At any given time, that windmill's on your roof or whatever, and it could be generating a little bit of power, it could be generating a whole lot of power, but it's spiky, it's uneven. If you were to just power your house from that windmill as is, like your amount of power available to your appliances would be all over the map, which again is okay if you've got some other way of regulating that current. But for the most part, if that was the only source of power for your house, you'd have a really hard time, powering your devices. Now, if you were to take that power generation and put it into a flywheel, then instead of these fits and starts when the wind is blowing and the wind is not blowing, all the energy from the windmill goes into the flywheel and it smooths it out. It spins it into a consistent flow, right? That wheel, sometimes it's getting more energy from the system, spins a little bit faster. Sometimes it's getting less energy, spins a little bit slower, but it smooths out that power. Another example, solar power, right? The application's even more obvious. Solar power makes energy when the sun's out. And then at nighttime, it's not making any power. So a flywheel will store the excess energy from the day, whatever you're not using as your panels are making them. And then at night, when the sun's not out, that wheel is starting to spin. It's slowing down, but it's still spinning and still generating the energy that you can then use. So why are we talking about all this? Because some enterprising marketer got it into their heads that this was the perfect analogy for marketing that explains modern marketing really well. There's one prominent vendor of software that promotes this flywheel really heavily because it helps them sell more of their suite of software products that are otherwise kind of disconnected. So it's just a sales tool for them. Here's the thing. In the context in which most marketers are using the flywheel concept, I don't think it's a particularly good model. Those marketers are operating under this belief that if you do a bunch of marketing to a customer, that builds the customer relationship, and that relationship powers sales. So they think that their marketing is the energy going into the customer relationship, and then what comes out of this relationship is sales, and this flywheel's in the middle. And I suppose in the abstract that could be true. The more you put into any relationship, the more you usually get out of it. It's a generally true statement, unless the person on the other end does not see the relationship as reciprocal, right? If they don't understand the social compact, that what you put in, you also get out, then that whole system breaks down. They could also be a sociopath. Anyway, but where all these flywheel analogies go off the rails is that they presume the flywheel analogy means the relationship is generating excess energy of what's put into it, right? When you read all the content about this, say invest in marketing, put energy into your customer relationships, and you'll make tons of money in sales. Is how people position this flywheel strategy, and with an actual flywheel, that is never ever true. No flywheel system, no battery system, ever generates more energy than you put into it. Ever. That's just basic physics, right? Most of these systems return less energy than you put in. Again, basic physics. Batteries have resistance. Flywheels have friction. There's something that is causing the energy that you put into a system to degrade, and that's just how things work. The function of a flywheel is not the ideal generation of energy. Certainly is never creating more energy than goes into it. The purpose and function of a flywheel is to smooth out irregularities in inputs. Right? That's what it's supposed to be doing. Most marketing doesn't have that problem per se. The analogy also breaks down in a few other ways. In a mechanical system, if you put in a negative input, right, something you put in, bad energy or whatever, off frequency, the system may draw energy to deal with it or whatever, but generally a short shock is not going to bring the system to a screeching halt. Right? If your inputs just stop, the system slowly spins down. If the system receives energy that's out of frequency, that might burn up some of your motors and things. But for the most part, the system's not going to grind to an immediate halt and cause this massive disaster. In a customer relationship with people and emotions, if you screw up just once, and maybe not even that badly, right, you can permanently wreck the relationship, right? And that those screw-ups can be magnified far outside of what's proportional to the system, right? Suppose you're a prominent pizza shop and a video of disgruntled employees spitting on the pizza goes viral, right? And it causes massive reputational damage. That can wreck a lot of people's relationships to the brand, even though they were not directly involved. So this idea of this flywheel building up this relationship and then this sudden system shock just blowing it up, again, the flywheel analogy is not a good fit for that, right? That's not how that works. Relationships in general break much faster than they're made because it's hard to gain trust and easy to lose it. Flywheels presume linear inputs and outputs, and relationships just don't work that way. We're messy. Our emotions are messy. They do not translate well to mechanical energy. Finally, the flywheel analogy in marketing breaks down because most of our marketing is self-centered, right? If you operate under the belief that doing a bunch of marketing to a customer is building the relationship that creates a social debt and an expectation of sales, you are in for a bad time. In general, and this is a broad generalization because there are a decent number of examples to the contrary, but in general, the way most people do marketing is that they create marketing and content and stuff that serves them. Right? That's very self-centered. If the customer happens to get any value from that marketing, it's an accident, right? It's incidental. But look at things like, every white paper ever which professes to examine an industry or the state of industry, but inevitably always concludes that the vendor who produced the paper is the only rational choice for the industry's problems, right? That sort of self-centered marketing breaks the flywheel analogy because the flywheel treats all those things as inputs to store energy, but they're not. Bad marketing takes away energy from a relationship. Bad marketing destroys trust. And so if you think about marketing activities with an absence of context as part of this flywheel system, you're going to believe that you're building a relationship when you're not. You're damaging the relationship you have with the customer. So the flywheel analogy is still useful in a couple of ways. First, it's a warning, right? It's a warning. It's a case study. It's an example that you probably shouldn't borrow concepts from other disciplines if you don't fully understand them, because you tend to look like an idiot to anyone who has domain knowledge of that discipline. Right? So if you are talking about flywheels, and heaven help you if you have a client or a customer who's a physicist or a mechanical engineer, they're going to look at you and go, wow, you really have no idea what you're talking about, right? Second, the concept of having some kind of buffer, some kind of thing, something you invest in that gives smaller, smoothed out returns over time is still a good idea, right? Investing in people, investing in relationships, investing in providing more value than you take, those are still genuinely good ideas. It's not a flywheel, but those aren't bad ideas. Those are ideas that you should implement in your marketing, that you want to give more than you take, just in general, just to be a good citizen, but also to be a good business that builds value and trust in the long term. Look at your marketing. Is your marketing building trust or diminishing it? Are you taking from the relationship more than you're giving to it? If the answer is you're taking more than you're giving, then that is like overdrawing a battery, right? At some point, the battery is not going to have any energy left in it, and then you run into a problem. Here's an easy test, and this is a test for you as a person, as a marketing professional, but as a person. Look back on your career and the friendships you have, the friendships you've made. How many friends do you still have today from past customers? This is especially true for anybody in a complex sales environment. So real estate, college, auto dealerships, B2B, appliance, sales, anything where you are interacting with another marketer or a salesperson. Look back. How many friends do you still have today from past customers, from past commercial relationships? If you've ever really gotten to know a customer and built a true friendship with them, one that outlasted the commercial relationship, then you understand what the flywheel is really all about. It's about giving more than taking and being present and feeding those professional relationships that turn into personal friendships, right? If you're doing that, you know what a flywheel really is all about. You know how to create value in a relationship, and those are skills that are so valuable. That you are, as marketers go, you are pretty rare in a very good way. So that's my rant about flywheels, because there's just a whole bunch of people using that term that don't seem to know what a flywheel actually does. Let's see what else is happening this week in the news. Got a whole bunch of articles. This week was a lot of ranting on the channel, on YouTube and on the blog, but a few ones that I thought were fun. The one I would have you read and check out is the one where it's talking about AI being a creative enabler. I was doing something fun last night, actually. A friend of mine was saying, how does this AI stuff really work? And so I said, okay, let's pick a Pokemon character, Charmander. And I created this whole series, like 51 different images of this Charmander character. Same pose, same concept, but as if it was rendered by all these different artists like John Singer Sargent or Rembrandt or Picasso. And the results were really fascinating and could not have been possible without AI. The art that it created was legitimately decent in many cases, really weird in a couple, but would not have existed otherwise. And that's kind of one of the points in this AI is enabling creativity, is that it's not going to take away jobs. What it is going to do is give a whole bunch of people who have creative impulses but no skills the ability to express themselves, and that I think is very, very healthy. We have some other stuff on brand as trust, on staying in your lane, and idiotic conspiracy theories, and a blog post on student loan cancellation. So lots to check out on the blog. Of course, wouldn't be the newsletter without some advertising. Reminder, we've got 2 great courses, the Google Analytics 4 course for marketers and the Google Search Console course. Google Analytics 4 course came up a lot this week in discussion. I was at the Agora Pulse Summit this week, and a lot of folks are saying, hey, where do I get some training on how to use Google Analytics 4 better? Well, there's a link right in the newsletter if you'd like to get to know Google Analytics 4 better and make it useful. I'm probably going to do a piece on alternatives soon, because one of the discussion topics came up this week was that recent rulings in the EU said that the use of Google Analytics is basically illegal. It's being appealed and stuff, but for folks who are operating heavily regulated industries, for folks who operate in California, the EU, China, etc., it's probably time to be looking at alternatives. New jobs this week we have data analyst at Verisk, digital analyst at Hennessy Digital, manager of Google Ads at Lionhurst, senior data analyst at Spanx, data analytics lead at Cultivate, engineering lead at Cultivate, senior data analyst at the Black Tux, and data analyst at CareRev. So lots and lots of analytics positions opening up, which is great to see. In other things in the news this week, reminders that people should not build your entire community on public social media because it could just go away. Pros and cons of AI content writing tools, which looks interesting. Blog launch plan, SEO, and Google's helpful content update was a big topic this past week. Talking about what's going on with it and that it is rolling out and it is having impacts. So keep an eye on your Google Search Console. And shameless plug, if you don't know how to do that, there's a course for that. As always, reminder, the Ukraine Humanitarian Fund is always looking for donations to help support the resistance to the Russian invasion, so please help out with that. Upcoming events in a couple weeks, be headed out to Cleveland for Content Marketing World. I'll be driving back out there again because apparently the flights to Cleveland are a hot mess right now, so I'm glad I'm driving. If you got any recommendations for fun podcasts to listen to, drop them in our Slack group. I'd love to hear what you're listening to these days. Marketing Props B2B Forum. Katie and I just finished putting together our workshop for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's a full day workshop on B2B marketing analytics. So the folks who sign up for that are going to hopefully come out of the workshop as better marketers. And may be really tired of us by the end of the 8 hours. That's the news for this week. As always, keep yourself safe. Crazy stuff happening out there. 3 pandemics now. We got OG COVID, we got monkeypox, and now the resurgence of polio. Yeah, it's something. So stay safe. Keep yourself safe. Take reasonable precautions, and keep on keeping on. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.